We're on.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Are there any guests? No? Pete's a guest.
I guess.
Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, sir.
That looked like a deer hunt.
The minutes of the May 13th meeting are the first thing on the agenda. As the first action item on the agenda. They're in your packet. Are there any additions or corrections? There too. Having heard none, I entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. I made the motion, George seconded, that we approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, now we're gonna swear. Do I get to go first? I know a lot of
Well, we
swear.
want to do it all, you can all three stand.
No, it's not that I know a lot of swear words. Good at it.
Yes.
Excuse me, go ahead.
If y'all want to stand, Mr. Biles, Mr. Stokes, Mr. Brooks, raise your right hand. I presented you on separate cover. You have your oath of office in front of you, and we shall read to swear you in.
We can do them all at once, right?
Yes.
Do we have to stand up? Okay, good.
Yes. Okay. You have your oath of office. You're gonna read. Okay. You're gonna read.
Who's gonna read it out?
All three of you are gonna read it.
Are we gonna read it at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, go.
I.
I, James Stubbs, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director Division No. 3 of the El Paso County Water Improvement District No. 1, and will do the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the policies of the El Paso County Water Improvement District No. 1, so help me God. That's it?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I've been trying to get to this point for the last 47 years.
I'll get your, yes, if y'all can sign those, I'll notarize them here after, and
Right here.
the certificate of election also, I'll get the secretary and the alternate to sign accordingly. To 10, June 10th.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I can't hear anything that's going on. Being everywhere, Bill carrying out.
You're very lucky.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. We don't need to sign any of this, right?
No, I'll get Mr. Ceballos and Mr. Brooks to sign them. Yeah, I just, that's it. And then, because he needs to sign.
There's mine.
You'll sign.
We're just swearing at one another, Jim.
You just need to sign.
Okay, great, thanks.
No, no, there's several. He needs to certify it as secretary. But I will get your signature.
Okay.
What? Are we all right?
Election of officers.
Oh, election, yeah, there you go, election of the officers. The floor is open for nominations for election of officers under 4B on the agenda.
Nomination for officers.
I usually do.
Yes.
I would like to nominate Johnny Stubbs to continue as president. Larry Ceballos is our secretary. George Brooks is our assistant secretary.
Secretary and director.
But I don't need to nominate directors, do I?
No, it's
No.
just, it's
You as
just,
vice
it's
president.
just vice president secretary, but he's not.
Well, why don't we
I
just,
can't
we want
nominate
to,
myself.
yeah.
So it's really
just
just
nominate the
Mr.
same
Stubbs
slate of
and-
officers.
Okay, I nominate the same slate of officers as we just had,
Okay.
with the same officers.
That makes sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
So then now here, we have a motion to
Yes, we need a
second.
second.
Larry seconded it. Larry seconded it.
Nomination closed, after, whatever.
So the nominations are closed. Well, go, yes.
Yes, we're good, yeah.
Yes, Johnny
We
Stubbs.
have a motion, yeah, so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Wasn't a thing of beauty, but we got
No.
there. We got there.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Lisa.
Thank y'all, I think. Okay. Number 5, Mary, you're on. Mary's got some new braces.
They already did it.
Oh, the minutes?
You need to get some diamonds in those little.
Lisa would make fun of me at my age with braces.
Oh, got braces?
What does age have to do with it? You're the one suffering. Okay, financial reports.
Okay, on our investment report, we do have one of our treasury bills that will mature at the end of the month. At this time, the rates, of course, aren't the greatest. For a 1 or 6 month term, we're looking at 0.18%.
0.18.
Correct.
And that's the treasury rate?
That's the treasury rate.
Okay. From 1.57 if you look. What about the banks? Do we have any idea?
The bank, I have not looked at that. If I could go ahead and do so and see where they're at.
Okay.
They're gonna charge you to store your money.
Yeah, those negative.
Schedule of investment.
So what you're telling us then, Mary, is here about the end of this month, you'll probably be looking for a home for that,
Reinvestment.
boy, that's our biggest CD,
Yes.
or our
by-
biggest chunk of money.
Correct, 5.1 million.
Oh, really?
The general fund still got that $1.8 million in it. Is there a reason for that, Mary? I guess it doesn't matter if the interest rates are negative.
We've got some vehicles and our tractors haven't been delivered yet
Oh, okay, so
from the budget,
you're
so.
gonna need it.
Yes, so
Yes, we
Mary
do
was
have
holding
several
off.
capital purchases.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, those tractors should be delivered, they said in 2 weeks now. The tractors are in, but the mowers just got here, the attachments, so they're working on putting them together. And then I think 3 of your utility trucks, Pete, still
Right.
haven't gotten here, so.
Correct.
So, that's why Mary was holding on to that.
I knew there was reason, I just didn't remember what it was. Okay.
And then, on that big CD, would you all want Mary to break it up and advertise it? She's gonna advertise it to all the banks and so on. So, do you want it broken up and say smaller?
If you don't have a need for it, I don't see why you couldn't keep it.
Keep it at the same?
Yeah, you might
Amount?
draw a little more interest if you don't see us needing it.
At this time, we don't see needing it at this time, and I will continue to keep it at 6 months. Hopefully, the economy improves after the 6 months, and probably get a slighter increase
Good.
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah. It's a good thought. You just don't know, and if, and like you said, if you want to break it up into $1 million CDs and do it some of it for 6 months, some of it for whatever you might need, make sure whatever that you anticipate needing that you make available, which you probably already have that structured in the rest of it. So
Yes, we do.
I doubt in 6 months you're gonna see much improvement in this mess. It's really a mess.
Seems like sooner or later it's gonna kick out. It's got to. It seems like there's been so much money added to it.
You just
But
wonder when the inflation can start.
when? That's the guess.
So it changed from
It's
1.57 down to
It's gotta kick in sooner or later. but
That's the
when?
rate
Right.
at this,
Somebody
as
has to
of
pay the
today.
bill,
So they're not set much.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
They're not.
All that stuff's.
Great grandchildren.
That's right, Charlotte.
Yes, prior to the maturity, we'll submit bid
Talking about
request.
those $1
That's a
trillion,
major.
trillions of dollars
Yeah.
in deficit, and we just keep
Yeah.
adding trillions and trillions of
Yeah.
dollars.
Like it's nothing.
Just nothing. Any other comments on the investment report? Okay, balance sheet?
Balance sheet, under the current assets, account number 11600, accounts receivable other. That balance consists of our drain maintenance fee, it's still pending, and also our capital improvement, which we just received this week. So that will be reflected in the June's balance sheet report.
Okay.
Well, I've been driving around in the Upper Valley all over trying to find a bridge to live under. And those drains are really in good shape up there. I mean, they're better than most of the yard. So that's great. That's the reason, I mean, the whole deal, the city's paying for it, and we're getting to do the work. Really. Although you ruin all the habitat for the birds.
Yes, you could.
You called the
We're
best.
reminded about that. All right. Any questions or comments about the balance sheet? No? Net revenue?
I have one question on net revenue, and it might have been me never noticing, or something changed, or my brain kicked in. The over-under part on the expense seems backwards to me. So it shows that we're over budget, we're actually under budget, right? For example, capital projects materials, year-to-date, 499, budget 2.7. So that 2.2 should have the parentheses around it, shouldn't it? And the ones below that should not.
I think it's the way you look at it, you
Yes,
still have
yes,
two
it
point
was
two, you
just
haven't made
a,
your budget.
formula.
Yeah. And has it always been that? And I just now caught it because my brain's not having trouble with that, whereas.
I think it was the other way around and we changed it to that originally. So,
Okay.
it's a difference between revenue and expenses. It's confusing because they reverse when they go revenue or expense, but
Right.
I know we had it the other way around for a while, right, Mary? And there was, I think, a similar request.
Maybe I was.
Either way,
You know, I've been wanting done it.
Well, the top part's fine, you know, that looks great. It says over, under budget, we got the parentheses, so you know you're under budget. This one, over, under, is backwards. We're actually under, for example, the direct expense, and it shows that we're over.
okay, well, they need to be reversed.
Maybe I would
They're-
request again, if I was one, then I could have been, on the expense side, if you just press a button and switch it around,
Correct, I'll make that correction.
on the expense side. You see what I'm saying, Al?
Yeah, so they need to be, the equations need to be reversed between revenue and expense to make it work right. So maybe they just got copied, Mary, that they're all the same again.
I
We had done that, we had reversed them at one time with that.
If it's possible.
The equations are exactly backwards from each other for the expenses from the revenue.
Right.
So we'll get that corrected.
For this time, and then next time we want it.
Next time, yeah. Next time when I can't figure it out, I'll.
Art's brain kick in again.
Okay. That was all. I just had that little, almost a typographical thing.
On our revenue side, we are expected, we just issued out our the first and the second quarter payment for the 2001 implement contract, which consists of 2.8 million. We also will be invoicing the third quarter come September. So it would be a total of 4.2 million we should be receiving from El Paso
Oh,
Water.
that'd be fantastic. Okay.
They're our best customer. Thank God.
Your best buddy used to run them, so we are.
That's what gets, what helps you to be nice to folks, I guess. $500 check report.
I had one question maybe for Chewy. You look at line 25, 34, 37, we had a bunch of minor beams and a lot of little wrecks, little fender benders up and down? You usually don't see 3 of them in 1 month there.
Yeah, one of our brand new trucks was a little bit of damage. One of our new ditch riders had a turnout, pulling into one of our narrow canals, but our 3 safety officers have met with them and they're taking care of it.
Okay,
Some of those are reimbursable, but just depends on the issue,
okay.
Better than off in View.
on the incident. Huh?
You lost the whole truck.
Yeah, they
The new one.
ran into a
telephone pole.
telephone pole on hard track
One of their,
on Borderland Road.
A brand new one.
Yeah, brand new one. Guy fell asleep. That's right.
well, that's not goodness. Ooh, and he's okay.
Yeah, he's okay.
lived.
Yeah.
I think the seatbelt saved him.
And then the lines right above that 29 to 33, I noticed they were all
Yes.
same amount. What the heck?
I thought that too.
This is, with COVID-19, we've had the offices and vehicles disinfected. We're using this company and now we were able to purchase the materials needed so we can do our own.
Oh,
But it was finding, you know,
somebody.
the materials to be able to do it before. It was, you just couldn't find them. And so we hired this company, same company that El Paso Water was using, and so they did a very good job. And we, last week was the last week, right, Lisa?
Yes.
And so now we're doing our own.
Why are there 2 bills on the same day twice?
It depends
For
on,
the same amount exactly.
It's just.
It's a yard.
Invoicing date. They were coming once a week to the main office, and then we also have them going
There-
to the
there's-
Garcia and the Rios yard as
There was
well.
one day, Mr. Brooks, where they would go to our Garnifio office and our Rios yard at on the same day.
That includes all the material and chemicals and everything?
Yes.
Yes,
So it was
labor.
taking care of all 3 yards.
and the vehicles.
I got a question on number 13. Every little change.
Number 13,
Yeah, on the front page.
okay?
2 chainsaws.
Those are
2 of them.
2 special
Whoa.
chainsaws that we purchased to go into concrete for waste weight 2. We had to go into
Oh,
the,
I thought you got some little trees out there. Big
although
trees.
they're actually, they're special, in order to put those protective sliding metal sheets inside the concrete,
Oh.
Pete had to go in there and cut about, what was it, 4 inches, Pete?
4 inches, yes, sir.
Into the concrete so they could attach those in there, so they could place the gates. So,
There's a chainsaw that does it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh.
it's
Holy
a pretty nice,
I don't think I want to see
Pete,
that.
Pete had seen it.
Not a disc, it's a chain.
It's a chain, a chain.
It's a concrete chain, yes, sir.
And Pete had seen it out at, when he went to Las Vegas, what was it, Pete, that
The world
conference?
concrete?
World of Concrete.
Right.
He had seen them, so he came to me and said, you know, I think this is what we're gonna need to, in order to speed up that. It was a challenge even with that equipment.
Oh, yeah,
I went by to see them gates, they're impressive.
They came out nice.
They look good. Have you guys seen them?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
It looks real professional.
And Pete's working on the chain link fence.
Six around it.
Yeah.
You have to have a pilot's license to operate that thing?
No,
The gates?
no, not at all.
I'm kidding, another chainsaw.
Oh, the
It's like buying a
The
jet.
owner's manual is inside that little box over on the right hand side.
I'm sure, I was thinking it would probably be able to fly, I mean, at that cost, it ought to be an airplane.
Julian, how have you guys been with T-Mobile? You're happy with it?
actually, no.
Yeah,
I think they extended themselves on the antennas,
yeah.
and they're having a lot of issues. We're having problems with communications along the border now. Verizon has fixed their issues, and so we're in the process of probably going back to Verizon.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at my place, they have it.
It's still terrible. T-Mobile is
I think my dang phone works better in Bahia than it does over here.
Yeah.
Anyone called them complaining about this mess from San Diego to Brownsville? you were on them enough, they'd knock your bill down in half.
Yeah.
Now that they fixed it, they sent a letter that said, okay, it's fixed, so we're gonna go back up to the original rate. So you said we saved a lot anyway, switching,
Yes.
correct?
No, we did. And
Maybe they'll,
Robert's got some issues with his ditch riders. You know, the phone is very important for our communication, although we have a two-way radio, but sometimes the phone works out best. And
Especially when they're not in their pickup.
Now, all along the Riverside Canal, it doesn't
No,
work.
I know.
Worse.
When you're going down the border highway, it comes in and out.
And so I find out that when you try to call the ditch riders, you almost, first time you call them, they just go like to voicemail. Then you call them the second time, and it seems like the second time you can catch them, but you got to dial 2 or 3 times. And I understand it, but sometimes the farmers don't understand when they're trying to get a hold of them. And I tell them they got to call them twice.
I can live over here, that's the way it is. It's been that way a long time. Though.
yeah,
Yeah, but it got worse here about a couple of weeks ago.
yeah.
About 2-3 weeks ago. You turned
T-Mobile.
terrible.
I can remember years ago, in certain areas here by Quadria, my phone didn't work. Still didn't. Still doesn't.
So what Verizon has done, they've negotiated a deal with Mexico to use their towers. So that should really improve communications along the border.
It hadn't seemed to work down where I'm at yet. I stayed with Verizon through thick and thin, and it hadn't really. I still get the Mexican tire, and it's amazing to hear somebody answers you in Spanish, says, "Well, this will not cost you anything, but I wanna, what number are you trying to dial?" Wow, no, that's all. So,
On the copy machines, on number 29, 23, sorry. How many copy machines do we have? Is that just a rental charge for the copy machines, or
says maintenance.
is it just maintenance?
What number are you looking at?
23. Is it a rental or just maintenance?
That's the big machine that we have here outside.
And all the printers and all the stations.
All the
In
stations,
the
right?
offices, correct.
So it comprises about what, 5, printed 5? 4?
No, we have our main copy machine, and then we have one back entrance, and then we have about, how many, 15 printers?
Are they all tied in?
It's
Yes.
close to that,
Yes,
yes.
they're all
They're all
tied in
networked.
together.
I was gonna say, if there's just three copy machines, that, it's kind of pricey, but it's overall, okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Anything else under the $500 check report? Credit card report?
did good, Judy. Wow.
Thank, I even got a credit.
I saw
Give me money
that.
back.
That was American Airlines when we were gonna fly to Cedar Rapids. Mary and Sharon had to go through quite a challenge to get credit back from American Airlines.
Good luck, yeah. You
We
got
finally
it,
got it.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I like
That's the
Jay's.
American Airlines.
Don't you? Yeah, thank you. I like Jay's credit card expense. Jay?
Actually, Mr. Reyes is better.
You're going negative.
What did you buy in the races?
When I looked up
Pardon me?
companies to
You're
see
going
if they're
negative.
operating in Washington,
Yeah.
Texas, and Secretary
That
of
was-
State, it's $1.
That was my
I don't want to
airfare.
learn no more. I don't want to learn no more.
No, that was due to the COVID, my airfare for my annual conference.
All right. The legal and consulting fees, this deal has mushroomed because of all of the stuff that's going on in the case with depositions and all of the things that we've been doing, trying to make ourselves known with the court, and so it's gotten pretty high, but I want to tell you, I haven't told you guys, is Renee on?
No, I can get him on if you want. We were gonna wait for executive
It doesn't
session.
matter, I was gonna tell Maria and Renee and you that final paper that we sent to people to read is tremendous. I mean, I thought, God, this, I don't think I'm qualified to judge brilliance, but I thought that was a brilliant deal myself. I thought, my gosh, if this isn't exactly what the deal is to the T, I've never read anything. Maria, thank you, and tell Renee the same, and Al had a big part in developing it too. So,
I
that
get-
was tremendous.
I don't know if we.
I don't know if we get into it to all the board members, have we?
No?
Maria sent me one yesterday.
Yeah, not at this point. We certainly obviously can get it out, today and quickly.
Yeah, you know, I should have brought mine, we could make copies, but I thought probably everybody else had one, but I mean, it's a motion or a plea, I don't know exactly what we're calling it, but it's to inform the judge exactly how the system works, because nobody has. And he's been begging the question, and so these guys have worked diligently for the last 3 weeks or so, and wordsmithing it, manufacturing it, or whatever you want to say. To me, I think it's really right, exactly on point. So I hope the judge thinks the same.
Okay, we actually sent it?
And thank you, guys.
Did we actually send it?
And we sent it to the DOG.
Yeah, I sure would like to see it myself. Could Maria send me a copy?
Yes, she will.
She'll get it.
Yeah, we'll get copies out, and yeah, so at this point, just the form that it's in is, you know, internal, work product to set the basis for, something more formal, for the judge, and certainly obviously later for motions, but it's, as Johnny indicated, at this point, we've shared it with DOJ under our confidentiality agreement with them, and are moving it forward to a more formal, probably a kind of a letter brief to the judge at some point this summer.
So anyway.
Yeah, we can talk more about it in closed session.
Yeah, well, thank you anyway.
Yeah.
You did a great job. That was going to explain, what I was trying to do to explain to the rest of y'all why the expenses have gone up tremendously, and they're doing a lot of preparations. They've been involved in depositions that New Mexico's had to have more of, and Al has not been deposed yet, and they've been preparing for that also, so I think we're, that to explain the expenses, guys. And the reason I did that in open session was to explain the expenses. Okay, so I didn't want anybody to want to choke you guys, so.
Well, that probably can't stop that.
Well, no, I know, that's a separate issue, I understand. All right, anything else, Mary? Anybody got any questions of Mary? And Rose says her reports will be next.
Yes, Rose has been out, she's had some kidney stone issues. So she's been out for a couple of weeks.
Okay, so her reports will be in June, right?
Yes, in July.
That says June, didn't it? Yeah, the reports for May will be presented in June, but we mean July.
July, yes.
July report for May and June.
Yeah, May and June.
All right, Julie, you're on.
Okay. So, touch on a little bit on COVID-19 and what's been going on here in the district. Presently we've got 4 employees that are out being tested because one of them went to a funeral in Mexico, and so we thought we better have that person tested. And then the other 3, they had relatives that have tested positive, and we're in close contact with them. So we've been keeping on top of that. So we sent them to be tested, and they'll remain out until they get their results. We've had some other employees that have been tested, and thank goodness, thank God that they came back negative, and so we're trying to stay on top of it as much as we can.
I think you guys have done a great job in dealing with this pandemic or whatever it is. I think you did to be able to continue to operate, which we had to, and to prevent any of the,
procedure's been really good. I think you took a hold of it, and I congratulate you to take a hold of it in the very beginning, and in a common sense manner, and go on about our life, but to make sure that we're not causing anybody any problems.
Thank you. It's been a little rough at the beginning, you know, convincing the employees that we were doing the right thing, that to stay calm, remain calm, and there's been additional fees that we've had to lay out, but I think all in all, we've protected the employee as much as we can.
Well, that's the biggest problem of it, is the fear factor and all of this stuff, and I mean, you handle it in a calm manner, and you did it in the proper manner, and you know, once people have to, you know, the fear factor goes away, then people can kind of get back to doing it, and by keeping them informed and by doing the right things, what, you know, they say, the experts say, I think you did a great job in getting this thing to work and preventing it from taking over our, because it could have. You know, you could have had one and not paid any attention to it, all of them being, you know, infected.
And that was always, especially Robert's fear, running water and having somebody test positive, and then, you know, losing 7 or 8 ditch riders. It would have really crippled us.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. So we've really done well by.
Actually, how do you get the testing? Do we have some medical facility that does it, or is it just open?
Well, it just depends. We suggest we give them a list of different sites where they can go, and then it's up to them to pick the site that they want to go to.
Because for a while there, they wouldn't take you in unless you were show symptoms.
Right.
Has that gone away now?
Yeah, there's more and more sites now that test and that don't charge. And then, of course, there's some physicians that are testing that will charge you. But I think we've gone from maybe 1 or 2 locations to now there's like close to 15 locations in El Paso.
You know, the thing about it is, just because they test positive, that doesn't mean they're contagious. And you have to, but you still have to do a quarantine. Right. Certainly. I mean, some of it, there's actually 2 different kinds of tests, one for antibodies and one for infection.
That's good to know.
It's, I think they're learning more and more now. They're admitting that people are not infectious until they show symptoms. I heard that this morning. The World Health Organization. But if you look at all those deals, whenever they came out with it, they said they may be. There's always a small word in there that people miss. It could be, it may be, if, those kind of words. And they always lean more to the precaution to be careful, which is the proper way to do it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's a real test for the American, well, for the world. All this stuff.
Well, I gotta say, you've done a bang up job. The transition has been good. Yeah, great.
And we've had a spike of cases in Texas and New Mexico. Well, mostly the western states have spiked up a little bit, and the eastern states have gone down almost.
Right.
It ain't going away. I mean, you know, you just deal with it. It's part of our society.
You realize now.
Yeah.
It's endemic now.
That's all
Just dealing with it.
I had on that, unless you all have any other questions on it.
Your gates turned out to be great. The product was awesome. The Plan B.
Yes, and Pete will show you some.
Okay.
He's got a lot of pictures on that project, but the man Ruiz did a tremendous job.
We've come a long way, Richard.
Yeah.
We were self-performing all this stuff ourselves. It's great.
On item B, we got awarded a grant from Texas Water Development Board here recently, this week. We applied, it's a section from US 54, the North-South Freeway, through the zoo, and through probably to the second bridge, if we can go that far to concrete line the channel there, but it'll take care of a huge problem once we're able to do that. That's always been a troubled area for Pete to go in there with maintenance equipment to keep that clean, mowed and maintained. So once we do that project, then I'd like to revisit with the board on possibly working something out with the zoo on maintaining the banks where we can have them utilize the banks in that area, as long as they don't interfere with our channel and maintain that section where we don't have to go into the zoo anymore.
That'd be great. When's the projected start?
Afraid of the animals
We can start in 2021 on this project. So, but we've got so many lined up right now, so we might not start that one until 2022.
Let me know, I'd like to be part of the conversations with you, interact with the city.
Okay. All right. And there was 200, I will say, 250 applicants to Texas Water Development Board, and they only chose 5, and we were the only irrigation district that got awarded that $300,000 grant.
Very good work, guys.
Yeah, Omar been doing a real good job putting those grants together. I mean, he's paid for himself, I don't know how many times over.
And that's great too. I mean, we're making so much progress into bringing our district in from 1930 standards up to more modern, and we've needed it for a long time. And we've been able to do that without raising tax money, so thanks to a lot of other different revenues. Anyway, it's encouraging, and then we got Pete taking care of it, getting it built, and Robert enjoying the fruits of our efforts, right? So, okay.
We've got a couple other sites that we want to work on that Robert's pointed out. We had one employee injured with one of the old gate systems where they used the cheater bar.
Yeah. I know, I got a few injuries.
So we've got some sites that.
Don't touch it, Danny.
Somebody had to move the check.
But going up, all in all, I think we've taken care of the majority of the huge problems that we had.
Yeah, those things are dangerous. You know, those deals are like those old high lift jacks.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
damn things are dangerous.
The
Oh
ladder
my
jacks,
God, they'll
yeah.
kill you. And that's the same thing on those. They work and they're simple, but they can sure get away from you quick.
You can knock your teeth out in a minute.
Yeah.
All I have, does you all have any other questions on?
The only time I've ever been knocked out in my life was a ladder jack, and my hand was greasy, and it slipped off that thing, and it was spring loaded, that spring.
Whacked you
Right underneath here, and knocked me
Yeah,
out.
they're dangerous.
How often do these come up available from, is it annual or?
The grants, usually about every 6 months, for Texas Water Development Board now, with the Bureau of Reclamation, it's been every year.
They apply it all?
Good, yes.
Southwest A&M had one too.
District engineer, you're on.
We did the final allocation for this year. The river is dry for about 15 miles north of San Marcelo. So I would say that's pretty easy to estimate the flow rate. It's 0. We have 355,000 is our final allocation for this year, so obviously we'll, Julie and I will work with Robert to just come up with some estimates of how much we can conserve for next year. We're gonna need it. And you can't predict what the monsoons will be like, but hopefully we'll have a productive monsoon. But we sure had a terrible, I think the biggest thing to illustrate, we almost had a normal snowpack, and we got almost zero runoff this year, very little. And I keep telling you guys that, the scientists have screwed up that terminology to where you think if you had a normal snowpack, you'd have a normal runoff because they're both supposed to be normal. But it takes us about 50% above normal to get a good runoff these days. And so you see those snow reports in the future. If it says normal, you can know that's not good. It needs to be significantly above normal to be able to put water in the reservoir.
That's like saying normal weather. I hope we get back to normal weather. There is no such thing. There's no norm for weather. It's every day's different.
Yeah, we got stuck with that word because you got put in the compact. It's really, more of a long-term average or a median. But those things, that relationship, I guess at one time between the snow and the runoff was consistent, but I guess it's from upstream water use. It's really gotten so that it's no longer valid. So if you say, hey, you're good up there, well, it's got to look really good to be good for us. So I'll do that. I have, I'm gonna share the screen, let's see, I think it'll work here, let me go ahead and. So you guys see a curve up on your screen?
Yeah, it's on.
This was a study we did at the beginning of the year, and I'm continuing to update it. It was done by the allocation committee, and it was made public last month. And I presented it to the board on doing it. So it looks, from this curve is a number that Robert uses to estimate about how much additional water we have to release to get the water down to El Paso. So you can see, obviously, as we start the year out, the losses are very high, and they taper off. I'm using 2018 losses to estimate the end of it. I just did a calculation about right here in the middle, and we're pretty much on track with this curve. So you can accumulate those losses that are starting like the first couple of days after release. We're at 700 TFS a day loss, which is a lot. And now we're tapering down close to the 200 CFS number. And you add that all up and it comes out to be about 83,000 acre feet a year. So I think it's important to realize that historically, at least during the time period of both the D2, even the previous drought, 1950s, and of course during the full allocation period, that we would get significant amount of return flow water from the drains out of New Mexico that would not only compensate for this amount of loss, which was actually less than this back then. The loss back in those time periods was about 60,000. That's mainly from evaporation and trees and phreatified salt cedars and things like that. And so now not only has the loss gone up, we're up to 83. It's gone up by 25%, but the zero drain flow, and there's a little bit of Montoya, which is in this number, and that swing is about from positive 200,000, now we're about negative 100,000. So we're having about a 300,000 acre feet a year swing in the performance of the project. Fortunately, the operating agreement takes care of that, and so we're able to, Texas is able to continue to operate, but it's just to let you guys know that a lot of that is compensated for by EPCWID, the procedure set up in the operating agreement. That curve right there, just give you appreciation. There was a lot of people, I think there was over 25 people worked on this, at least collecting the data in the field. To do that, to come up with that curve, you have to go back and analyze in a very systematic manner, even though we're the only ones on the river. These are the hydrographs for the primary stations on the river as the data comes in from our telemetry. And I know it's too small to see some of these points, but they're basically a bunch of meter teams out there calibrating these hydrographs so we get valid data. And then we start processing and looking at periods where it's relatively stable. Robert's not changing the flow of release, and he's not changing the amount that he orders, and everything is fairly stable during these times. The only thing that's changing is the hydrology and the hydraulics of the river, so we can track that and see what's going on. To some degree, Robert, we saw very low pumping early on, but now we've actually seen some losses increase recently, and it's probably due to groundwater pumping adjacent to the river. That they've, back in March, there wasn't much irrigation going on. It was cold, and now it's hot. And so we're seeing actually a slight increase in losses recently. But we go through a series of these straight line curves when it's steady, trying to figure out what the losses are at different places in the river. By far, the primary loss is in the largest losses in the Mesilla Valley between Leesburg and Anthony. We see relatively small losses below Anthony and small losses in Rincon, but we see big losses in the upper Mesilla and the lower Mesilla on doing that. I think the last calculation here shows we were at 42% of the loss was in the Rincon area, 47% was in the upper Mesilla, 39% in the lower Mesilla, and 11% below Anthony in the Texas section. So you're looking at about 85% or 86% of the losses being in the New Mexico part of the Mesilla. that probably makes sense to everybody that's been in the litigation, right?
Right.
So that was a huge amount of work, and I appreciate Robert's team helping do that, and EBID's team contributed a lot. The Boundary Commission and Reclamation all pitched in to get that done. Of course, it ended up being reviewed by the two other members, so I had to do all the analysis and the spreadsheet work for it and the paper. But they did edit it, and they did provide their comments and some of the corrections and things like that, so I appreciate that. You guys have any questions on that?
No, sir.
We worked on 3 other memorandums, or 2 other memorandums that I'm gonna talk about with you guys, really 3, and some has to do Art and I think all those are still, we probably need to discuss those in closed session because they're related to the litigation, so I'll go over those in closed session with you guys.
All right.
Any questions about not having any water in the river?
Yeah, I'm just hoping that the gone growers in Las Cruces don't move up to the valley of Ben Socorro. There won't be any ever in the river. That's the reason it's not there now.